On your Monday episode of Locked On Raptors, we talk about the single biggest thing to happen in the NBA this weekend. The Toronto Raptors starters playing 23 pretty good minutes.
You are Locked On Raptors, your daily Toronto Raptors podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey! What's going on? And welcome to another episode of Locked On Raptors, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It is Monday, February the 3rd, and I'm your host, Sean Woodley. I've been covering the Toronto Raptors now for 11 seasons on various platforms. You can find all my work over on Blue Sky. You can also find the show on Instagram, and you can join us in the Locked On Raptors Discord server, link in the description of the podcast. Come hang out with the sickos where we talk ball. It's a great time. You can also go and support the daily Locked On Raptors newsletter. QR code on the screen if you're watching on YouTube, or you can go to the link in the description of the podcast as well. It's 100% free. All you got to do is drop your email in the little bar, and it will send you piping hot emails 5 days a week with my original writing about your Toronto Raptors. You get Katie Heindel 4 days a week with her League at Large pieces. You get Michael Shearer basketball poetry every Thursday. It's a great thing. Please go subscribe, and it helps me out big time when you do it. So thanks in advance for doing so. Today's episode is brought to you by friends at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDINNBA for $20 off your first purchase. And with that, let's get rolling here on your Monday edition of the show, talking about a pair of Raptors games. They lost to the Bulls on Friday. Very strange game. We'll talk about why it was strange and why it was even stranger that they followed it up with the game they played against the Clippers. Just like a beautiful 48 minutes of really excellent high-level basketball. Very cool stuff. We'll get into the mixed messaging from this weekend from the Raptors and the rotation patterns and the guys who played and did not play and all of that. We also got the good, the bad, and the of course, coming up later on. But I want to start off on today's show talking about the starters who, look, when we kind of reconvened, I think it was like early June or maybe late December, early January, right around the time that they got Immanuel Quickley back. The Raptors were in a tailspin, but they finally got their team healthy. We did a show here, and I talked about how the next couple of months were really, really important information gathering time, right? What can we learn about this team? What are they capable of? And I have to say, like, it's gone pretty swimmingly overall. They're 9-7 since the start of January. They're playing very good basketball. They're 9th in the NBA in defense in that time. They're 2nd in the NBA in defense since January the 13th. There's been a lot of really good progress made here. But the single most important thing I was watching for in this stretch, which we obviously didn't get a full look at because Immanuel Quickley missed some more time and just got back over the weekend. But the single biggest thing I was going to be watching here was, what do the starters do? Can they find success? Can they recapture some of what made a similar looking lineup work last year so well? And just sort of how damaging might the defense of Gradey Dick and RJ Barrett and Immanuel Quickley to a lesser extent be to the hopes of that lineup being effective? And I know a lot of people kind of had their beliefs. So this is going to be a bad defensive lineup. It's going to stink, too much bad defense. And certainly with the way guys were playing defensively for the first 2.5 months of the season, no doubt it looked like it was going to be a pretty untenable lineup defensively. However, over this last stretch, we're actually seeing modest steps forward taken by the guys in question. Gradey Dick, RJ Barrett in particular. Immanuel Quickley, I thought, over his 2 games this weekend, limited minutes, played just 32 minutes across the 2, but I thought he showed some defensive juice, some nice on-ball stuff, a great transition, sort of poke away, steal, whatever you want to call it, in the game against the Bulls on Friday, some nice rotation and contests and stuff like that. The stuff we know Immanuel Quickley's good at, plus a little bit of on-ball stuff, looking a little more elusive, getting over and around screens, things like that. All of this stuff that we've seen here is important information to put into the hopper that the Raptors are eventually going to use to make their next decisions as far as where this team goes from here. And the starters, again, they have barely played any minutes. They played 62 minutes before the Friday night's game against the Bulls in the entire season. They played 23 minutes together over the weekend. So like a quarter of their minutes, just about, slightly more, came over the course of 2 games this weekend on the entire season. We're still dealing with tiny samples, and there's very little to actually take away. But I do think we saw this weekend the sort of grand vision, the hope for what the starting lineup can be if everything is ticking. If RJ Barrett and Gradey Dick can continue now this post Scottie Barnes shaming run of actually playing acceptable wing defense. Like they did it again this weekend. Friday night against the Bulls. Like some really nice moments for Gradey Dick defensively. A really rough offensive game for him, but the way he slid his feet, the way he took guys into the chest, the way he just did not get completely, back cut and blown through and driven by with reckless abandon, like genuine, earnest, positive steps on defense for Gradey Dick of late. And then RJ Barrett too. Dude guarded Kawhi Leonard on Sunday and looked kind of all right doing it. Like, again, we are a long way away from Gradey Dick and RJ Barrett being considered quote unquote good defenders, positive defenders. But I do think we're seeing that, like, they're kind of telling on themselves right now. Like, you do a thing that you haven't done before and show that you can do it. That kind of almost raises the bar a little bit. And like, there's going to be now a sort of leg to stand on for the coaching staff when these guys play poor defense, which they will surely again, because they're not great defenders. But there's like a leg to stand on now for the coaching staff. Be like, hey, well, we saw you do it. You've done it against good teams and good offensive players. And RJ, in your case, literally against Kawhi Leonard, like there's no excuse for you not to bring it. Scottie Barnes calling them out. Again, he didn't name names specifically, but like you can kind of infer who he was talking about after that first Hawks win a week and a half ago, where he called out the lack of good perimeter defense being played. And we've seen a response. That's awesome. And that is all part of this information gathering segment of the season before some changes surely happen by the deadline on Thursday. And it's all valuable stuff. And again, the starting lineup still getting beaten by 8 points per 100 possessions over the course of their time together. But this weekend, pretty good stuff. About a plus 22-ish net rating, an 83.7 defensive rating. They looked really good in the first half in particular before Quickley's minutes kind of dissipated. We'll get into his minutes restriction stuff. It's been kind of weird, but the way they've kind of deployed his minutes. But we've seen the effect of the starting lineup be really, really high. Like they're kicking ass. They looked so good in that first half against the Clippers. Super crisp, super clean. The offense was running beautifully. The sort of idea of the sort of grand vision where you have RJ Barrett and Immanuel Quickley kind of dueling pick and rolls with Jakob Poeltl, Scottie Barnes getting in on the action too, and then doing his sort of individual creation thing from the elbows and the posts. Like it all kind of works. The offensive fit of those 5 players has always made a ton of sense. It's the reason why they were so successful last year in their limited run, albeit they were the second most used lineup the Raptors had all year last year. Again, the starters with Gary Trent Jr. in place of Gradey Dick. Like there's actually tape, there's actually proof of concept for this working. And if RJ Barrett can be an average defender, if Immanuel Quickley can be an average defender, that may be all you need. Because right now, what Scottie Barnes is doing defensively is, again, it's not getting talked about enough. I don't even think by Raptors fans. He's been remarkable, and he is setting a floor for this defense that makes all kinds of other stuff, all kinds of defensive hijinks from individual guys a little more acceptable, a little more tenable if you're trying to play winning basketball. Because what Scottie Barnes is doing, it's just this massive insurance plan to anything that seeps through on the perimeter, because he's just swallowing up possessions. Jakob Poeltl's doing it as well. Those two guys in tandem have been fantastic defensively of late. And the numbers with Scottie Barnes, I've talked about him, right? Over the course of the season, they are a top 10 defense when Scottie Barnes is on the floor, would be equivalent to a top 10 defense. That's floor setting. That is incredible. Since January 1st, the Raptors have 106.1 defensive rating in all Scottie Barnes minutes. That would rank as the number 1 defense in the NBA since January the 1st. That's huge. This is like changing the geometry and the dimensions and the needs and the sort of offensive upside you can lean into, because you can sort of compensate for defensive limitations of guys, right? This is why I continue to think the starting lineup needs as much run as possible, because their offensive ceiling is higher than any other lineup the Raptors can currently throw out there right now. Quickley, Dick, Barrett, Barnes, Poeltl, that's as good as it gets. If those guys can hum on offense and be just good enough on defense, that's a positive lineup. And right now, they've been more than just good enough on defense over this last couple game stretch. It's a tiny stretch. It's 23 minutes of 82 they've played all year. Neither sample tells us anything. But the individual flashes of seeing it actually work on the floor, if you can kind of translate that into a larger sample, that's really encouraging stuff. And I know people make fun of me. I lean on but those 300 possessions for the starters last year were so good thing a lot. And it's because it's the best sample of data we actually have on a lineup that is close to approximate to this lineup that they're currently rolling out to start. that we have anywhere in the database. And it's the one stretch of like sustained 10 games of play where we actually got to see the starters as sort of intended. Again, I think Grady's a more dynamic offensive player than Gary Trent Jr., if a slightly worse defender. It's kind of a wash to me. Like we that's all we have. And so of course I'm going to lean on it. Of course I'm going to say, hey, that big sample says this maybe is all right. Again, it's not a massive sample. It's like 160 minutes. It's not huge. Typically for me, 250, 300 minutes is kind of where you want your sample to be before you start drawing any kind of conclusions. And even then, there's noise in that. Season long lineup data is always going to be fraught and full of noise. But again, if like they're defending the way they have over these last few games, that's huge. And again, we're not going to know for a while if this has staying power. We don't know if RJ Barrett's going to be able to bring it like this every single night. If he can, changes a whole lot because it just makes the team make more sense. And it gives Scottie Barnes and Jakob Poeltl just enough resistance on the perimeter to be able to clean up the messes they need to clean up, and that they're so damn good at cleaning up. Really encouraging weekend for the starters. We need to see more of it. Quickley playing just the 15 and 17 minutes, mostly confined to first halves. Kind of weird, but he's looked damn good in these two games. He's looked really effective. He's been super efficient. He was 3 of 5 yesterday against the Clippers, got to the line 4 times, 6 assists in 17 minutes. You'll take that all day. Against the Bulls on Friday, looked exactly like you want Immanuel Quickley to look. Rip and pull up threes, finding 3-point looks off the catch in movement as a sort of jitterbug offensive player, floater game going. I thought he was really effective in that game on Friday against the Bulls as well. And I think they probably lost the game because they didn't go back to him at all in the second half because of the minutes restriction. And I get it. No problem with them taking it slow, but genuinely encouraging stuff from Quickley since he got back. And I continue to think Quickley, he's kind of the whipping boy right now because when he's played, they've not been great. They're 2-10 when Quickley plays. The starters haven't been good. I think that's missing a whole lot of context. And I think it's just like, again, it's the conflating of injured with bad thing. He's played 11 games this season over the course of now 4 little micro stretches. There's no rhythm to be found there. There's no like groove to settle into yet. Give him some extended run, and I am firmly confident that Immanuel Quickley is going to do more than he has so far this year. And look, he's had some bad games. He's also had some really good games and some really nice stretches. And I just, the sort of pandemonium about his contract and his fit and like, is he good? Is he a tank commander? Like, get a grip. He's barely played. And, the sample of the last couple games, which is as good as any other sample we've had of him all year, pretty encouraging, pretty good stuff. And I'm excited to see more from these starters going forward. RJ and Gradey and IQ, those guys being average-ish defenders. Gradey doesn't even need to be average. He can just be kind of a below-average defender who doesn't get totally dog-walked. And all of a sudden, this team makes some sense. They'll still probably need talent upgrades down the line to go truly win at the highest levels, but we're way away from that right now. We're just trying to set a baseline. We're trying to figure out, do they have a starting lineup capable of winning minutes? And right now, it's still very early days, and the overall sample suggests that the answer is a no, which is also fine if that's the answer. But don't rule out the fact that they might just be all right if RJ and Gradey and IQ can just be average defenders, which the last 4 or 5 games suggests like maybe is it this totally far-fetched imaginary land that it might have felt like a month and a half ago. We'll come back into the side, get into what was just kind of a weird weekend of messaging from the team, both in terms of the way the team was talked about and what they actually did on the floor. We will get into that coming up in just 1 second. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time, the single best place to buy tickets for the sporting events you want to go to, whether it's a concert, comedy show, those are on the list as well. It's all there for you to go and peruse with Game Time. Game Time Picks does all the work for you. It curates the best deals so you don't have to waste time searching through endless ticket listings. They just say, hey, this is the best one. You should buy this one. What a wonderful thing. Of course, you can also peruse. Maybe there's a certain place you want to sit. You like a certain sight line. Guess what? You can see the sight lines too because they have the wonderful view of your seat when you sit down. You're going to know exactly what you are going to be looking at before you ever go into the venue. That is pretty sweet. And look, the best part is you're covered with the lowest price guarantee. If you find a better deal somewhere else, they're going to refund you 110% of the difference. Plus, your tickets are guaranteed to be delivered on time with easy cancellation options if something comes up. That's huge. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply again. Create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Back at it here on your Tuesday edition of Locked On Raptors, talking about a weird weekend. Just like bizarre, yin and yang. You felt like maybe Friday you figured out the intentions of this team, and then Sunday it kind of throws it back for a loop. What I mean here is Friday, it really did feel like the day the Raptors decided to eat their vegetables, where winning clearly was not the priority of that basketball game. You're taking on the Chicago Bulls. At the time, they were 3.5 games back of the Bulls for the last play-in spot. And had the Raptors really wanted to go and chase down the play-in, I feel like they would have handled this game just a little bit differently. And look, Scottie Barnes played 33 minutes. I think Barrett played 31. Like, they didn't like suppress minutes necessarily, but I think the way they aligned the minutes and the way they closed this game suggested they had no desire to win that game at all. And, Darko Rajakovic spoke before and after the game against the Bulls about sort of development still being the priority for this team. Even though they're on a winning streak, it's still all about development. And we saw that play out mostly in the form of maybe the canary in the coal mine here of what the Raptors actually intend to do here, which is Jakob Poeltl. He played a lot of minutes this weekend. He played 18 on Friday, 21 on Sunday, or vice versa. Either way, he played a lot of minutes. And he was the reasoning that Darko Rajakovic gave for Chris Boucher not playing any minutes in the game on Friday against Chicago. And of course, Chris Boucher has been pretty awesome of late. He's been damn fun. He's been putting up 20 burgers just kind of over the course of single quarters for sport. He has the single best on-off differential for offense on the team this season, which is kind of insane. And he didn't play against the Bulls while the Raptors were on a 5-game winning streak. Seems a little strange. And I think it was very clear that they did not have all the desire in the world to win that basketball game. When the Bulls kind of pulled away in the third quarter, I think they were just like, all right, cool. We're not going to really go try to chase this one down. Even though, like, the start of the fourth quarter, Raptors are down like 10. And, the Bulls are no great shakes. And I thought for the most part, like, it was a weird game because the Raptors, I thought, played pretty well. There were some really beautiful sequences of excellent defensive ball they played and just last shot sort of weirdness at the clock and, sort of heaves and prayers and bailouts at the end of clocks that the Bulls offense kind of produced buckets that they didn't really deserve. I thought all told the Raptors looked like the better team process wise in that game, but they lost because the Bulls had an insane 3-point shooting night. And again, kind of got bailed out on some possessions where the Raptors, I thought, defended pretty nobly for 23 seconds, which is great. But, sometimes way she goes, make or miss league, Doug, all that. I think, once this got away in the fourth quarter, the rotation patterns were the kind of dead tell, right? It's like a 10-point game with 9 minutes left, and none of Scottie Barnes, IQ, or RJ Barrett were on the floor. Okay, yeah. I see what's going on here. And I'm not someone who at all really thinks I know there's this sort of faction of fans who think every little thing that happens is tank motivation or tank fuel or a thing that is made in the interest of tanking. I don't think that. I think some guys are just hurt or guys are held out of the lineup or rotation patterns happen where, guy takes a while to get subbed in because of stoppages or whatever. We put way too much stock into everything. We try to infer way too much. And I think we saw this weekend the danger of trying to do that because the Raptors very obviously didn't try to win that game on Friday. And then they came out Sunday and just played awesome basketball and did not at all seem upset about winning. They win this game 115-108. They were pretty comfortably ahead for most of the second half. And it was just a damn good performance where Chris Boucher played. Kelly Olynyk played after he also didn't play on Friday. Scottie played his usual 33, 34 minutes. And they seem to want it. And I don't know, maybe this is a thing where it's stealth trying to hand wins to the teams that might pass them in the standings, the Chicago Bulls being one of them. The Clippers are at no risk of passing the Raptors in the lottery standings. They're pretty good. And maybe it's a matter of, hey, test your mettle against the teams that matter. And then against the teams that don't matter, maybe this is where we kind of do some stealth development stuff and try not to put our best foot forward. Look, I didn't totally love that they clearly did not care about winning that game on Friday when they're in the midst of a 5-game winning streak. Maybe this makes me a dumb Rube boomer. I get it, whatever. Make fun of me all you want for thinking winning is cool and good, whatever. I don't care. But to sort of end a streak with such a whimper felt a little lame to me, but nice to bounce back against the Clippers and just kind of give a pretty good team and your best shot. I know they didn't have Norman Powell, but that's still a damn good defensive team. Harden, Zubac, that's not an easy team to go stop. Kawhi Leonard obviously was playing in this game, and is Kawhi Leonard injury history or not? And the Raptors just played a damn good game. And so it kind of leaves you a little confused as to, Like, what's the plan here? Are they going to trade their guys? Like, it seemed like that was a telegraphed, hey, Boucher and Kelly not playing Friday. We're going to preserve them to not get hurt. We're going to play the young guys, and we're going to trade these guys eventually. They're still on the team on Sunday, and they played. And so, like, I don't know. Like, where are they at? Where are their heads at there? It's interesting. Obviously, Davion Mitchell didn't play Sunday because of a foot thing. That just seems like a foot thing and not tank fuel again. It's ultimately, we're going to find out a lot this week, no doubt. And like, fear not, tank heads. I think the Raptors are still going to move off some of these veterans, and very clearly with the talk of Jakob Poeltl in particular and the focus on player development. Like, I think they're going to do the whole rookie thing down the stretch. We're going to see a lot of Jonathan Mobo. We're going to see a lot of Jamison Battle probably. You know, he hasn't played in a little bit. I think he's going to be back and ride out the 50 games that he's got on his two-way. I think we're going to see a lot of Jamal Shed once he's back and healthy. Like, this team is going to play a lot of rookies, and they're probably going to lose. We're probably going to see Ulrich Champche at some point before the end of March would be my guess. Like, if I had to put when do we see Champche playing regular non-garbage time minutes? Like March 20th? Is that kind of the cutoff? Maybe before that, maybe a little after, but we're going to see it at some point, I think. Like, they're going to go into try to lose mode here. And if the game, how they handled the game against the Bulls, a fellow sort of fringe tanky team that in theory could get down to the 6th worst odds if they really tried, maybe that's what they're going to try to do. It's just like hand wins to those teams and give their best shot against the good teams, which, by the way, they play a lot of in the month of February. So interesting to see how they handle all of this. But yeah, like, again, I would not fear if you're a tank head who's mad that they won on Sunday either, right? We're probably looking at the Raptors being pretty well cushioned to be the 6th worst team in the NBA. 6th in the lotto odds, completely fine. That's a totally reasonable place to be. Talked about it last week. It's really hard to be Wizards bad. We saw how bad the Wizards are. You don't want to be Wizards bad. That means a lot of really bad things are happening, and a lot of not good players are on your basketball team. To not be Wizards bad is a feature, not a bug. But like, you know, looking just ahead of them in the lottery standings or behind them, whatever you want to say, like the Sixers, Philly, sorry, that's the same team. The Sixers, the Blazers, and the Bulls all are 4 games in the loss column ahead or behind the Raptors. The Raptors have 33 losses. They each have 29. That's a pretty big cushion. I think that's a lot to make up, especially considering it seems like Portland is trying and playing well. The Sixers are incentivized to try, it seems, to try to push for the play-in. And maybe the Bulls drop. They just traded Zach LaVine, but we'd also know the Bulls love to be mid as hell. And maybe they don't intentionally drop. Maybe they just kind of give the keys to Kobe White if they don't trade him and have Nikola Vucevic keep on cooking. I mean, if the Bulls trade off and a bunch more guys, then certainly they become a team that could push the Raptors down to 7th in the lotto standings. But I think we're pretty comfortably looking at the Raptors, no matter what happens here, having no worse than the 7th lottery odds, which is completely fine. In a flattened lottery world, not a terrible place to be. Especially, if you're kind of closing out the season, playing the guys who matter for your long-term outlook. You're giving the future guys tons of run. You're still getting to see what you have in your starters for maybe shorter stretches. Maybe they're not playing 30-plus minutes every game. Maybe they're playing 25 to 28, but you still need to get some run there. I think you want to see what those starters have, even if rookies are going to take up a larger share of the minutes load for the team. And the tank's going to be just fine, folks. Wouldn't worry about it. But yeah, strange weekend where, their desire to push for the play-in versus not at all push for the play-in seemed a little bit split between the two results. But again, it's just 2 games. Inferring from what happens on the court is maybe not the easiest thing to do. We'll see what their actual intentions are by the deadline, one would think. Whether they make some sort of hilarious buying move or just, try to sell their vets and get some stuff back. And, that's what we'll see. It's weird week. NBA is in a weird place trade-wise. I have no idea what to expect. We're going to come back on this side, get into the good, the bad, and the to round out the show, where we will kind of touch upon the league at large and sort of where the Raptors fall into all of that. We also have to laugh at the Dallas Mavericks, right? We'll do that coming up in just one sec. Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Basketball season's heating up, and there's no better way to get in on the action than with Prize Picks, the best place for daily fantasy sports with over 10 million members and billions in awarded winnings. Prize Picks makes it easy and fun to turn your sports knowledge into real money. And the best part is how simple it is, baby. Here's how it works. You just got to pick more or less on at least 2 player projections. And if you're right, you can win up to 1,000 times your cash. It's that simple. All you got to do is more or less on the projections for certain guys on a given night. Austin Reeves probably going to have a chance to get a whole lot of assists right now as the guy running the show with no Anthony Davis and Luka Doncic still hurt, and LeBron James being extremely 40 years old. Maybe you want to go take the more on Austin Reeves points and assists for the next little bit until Luka gets back and totally eats into his usage. All kinds of stuff. The Raptors, obviously, you want to take the more on Scottie Barnes rebounds, on Jakob Poeltl points, whatever it might be. You can go peruse the prize picks projections for each night and make your entry very, very simply. Plus, you can check out the promos tab to tail any of the super sweet Millie winners, big game lineups. If you tail a lineup that goes 3 for 3, you can win a split of $1 million in promo funds. Download the app today. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's LOCKEDONNBA for $50 off. Or sorry, $50 instantly, that is, after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize picks, run your game. Wrapping it up here on your Monday edition of the show, talking about your Toronto Raptors weekend that was against the Clippers and the Bulls. And we'll start, we are going to get into the good, the bad, and the that is, if you're not familiar, which by now you probably should be, unless this is your first show, in which case, hi, welcome. The good, the bad, and the is the way we wrap up every single episode of this here podcast on the heels of a Toronto Raptors basketball game, where I talk about a thing I liked, thing I didn't like, thing that's got me a little bit intrigued from the latest in Raptors hoops. And we're going to go broader than just the Raptors this week. We'll start with the good, and we'll keep that Raptors focused. Ochai Agbaji. Really good game from him on Sunday, in particular against the Clippers. Great outing for him. And look, he's just like a really nice little player to have on your basketball team. Spot starter. Maybe I know there's an argument for him starting in place of Gradey Dick. I still want to see what the starters look like with Gradey Dick before we cross that bridge. But still, he's shooting 43% from the corners this year, which is very much in line with his career numbers. That just feels like what he is as a corner shooter. And the biggest thing, and he's doing this a little bit. I think he had a pull-up above the break 3 yesterday against the Clippers. He's hitting threes above the break at a pretty nice clip, and it's not been something he's always done. Above the break has been a struggle for him throughout his career. As a rookie, 29%. As a second-year player with the Jazz and the Raptors last year, 24% with the Jazz, then 19% with the Raptors. But this season, 36% on above the break threes. It's not amazing. It's like basically league average from above the break. 48th percentile, right in the creamy middle of above the break shooters. But considering what he's done at the rim, where he's a 66% rim shooter, he is just like a lethally efficient guy in the mid-range right now, even though he's not taking a lot of mid-range shots. But, the few he's taken have gone in. He's very much a rim and threes guy, and like the corner threes are going in, 36% above the break. Like, it's all really nice. And still, we'll see if it falls off from above the break, but the fact that they're going in the way they are right now is huge. And yeah, just like really additive basketball player to have on your roster. Did great work defensively in the game against the Clippers with IQ on the minutes restriction, not playing much in the second half. You loved that. He closed the game. Like, awesome stuff. 5 of 5 for Ochai Agbaji. Just like a perfect, nice little 6th, 7th, 8th man for the future who can certainly spot start for you whenever needed. Love an Ochai. The bad, the Dallas Mavericks. What are you doing, man? Nico Harrison. What on earth? Anyone who thinks Masai Ujiri and Bobby Webster are fools who lost their fastball, maybe you're right. But certainly you can find solace in the fact that they're not doing Nico Harrison level nonsense. Some of the things that he said in public into a microphone yesterday, outlining his reasoning for the Luka Doncic trade, which I don't know if you heard. Luka Doncic doesn't play for the Mavericks anymore. He's on the Lakers in exchange for Anthony Davis and some other stuff going either way. Not nearly enough stuff going back to the Mavericks based on the trade. Crazy nonsense. Unbelievable. And just the future is, the next few years. We don't care about 10 years. Like, none of it made any sense. And I know so many people are trying to make sense of what Nico Harrison and the Mavericks did here. Why did they only call the Lakers and no other team? Why did they pinpoint in on Anthony Davis so precisely? There must be a conspiracy theory going on here. Is this about ratings? Is this something that Adam Silver has planted Nico Harrison in Dallas to do? I don't actually think any of that's what happened here. My read on the situation is Nico Harrison went rogue and did something really stupid. And as we've seen from gestures broadly at the world, people in positions of power often make really stupid decisions. I just think that's what we're looking at here, and it's delicious. It's hilarious. Yes, it's kind of lame that the Lakers get to benefit from this, no doubt. Like, Luka on the Lakers, congrats, Lakers fans. You keep on getting these hilarious lifelines thrown your way. They're just in the sea, getting bombarded by little orange rings to pull them out of the sea at all times. It's kind of lame, but a world where there are dumb GMs doing dumb things just because, like, one Saturday they decided they wanted to do something dumb, like, that is a good NBA. Chaos. Let chaos reign. Let the nonsense that is professional sports actually be nonsense. Let Jimmy Butler play out these really protracted trade requests and make them super dramatic and stupid and nonsensical from both sides. Like, more of this in the NBA, please. The front offices of the league have gotten too samey. They're all too smart. They're all too Yale educated and have the same quant brain. Give me some fresh perspectives, which is, in this case, the fresh perspectives are bozo perspectives, dumb guy perspectives. Nico Harrison holding the mantle up for dumb GMs everywhere, and we love it. But man, what a bad trade for the Mavericks. Unjustifiable, unbelievable stuff. Pretty hilarious. The for me to round things out is just like looking ahead to this week, man. Pretty big week for the Raptors going into Thursday. Their name has been thrown around a lot as this sort of trade Greason type of team. Obviously, bigger names have been mentioned in connection to them as well. Andrew Wiggins, Brandon Ingram, kind of the big one. By the way, I'm just like, I think I'm so out on the Brandon Ingram thing. I don't like the fit with Scottie Barnes. I don't like the idea of bringing in a guy who lives in the mid-range and is reticent to shoot threes, even though he's good at it. And it's frustrating he doesn't do it more, but he's a guy who loves the mid-range. You want to bring in a mid-range merchant just as Scottie Barnes himself is kind of figuring out, oh, I can own this area of the floor. That seems weird to me. You got to pay him. I know he's a better player in a vacuum than RJ Barrett, but man, oh man, buyer beware, I think, on that one. But like, hey, if the Raptors get like a low-cost talent upgrade, like there are worse things too. They'll figure things out. I don't see how they do this without trading RJ Barrett, which is like a weird PR move. If it's just a straight salary dump and it's their expiring salaries for Brandon Ingram coming back, I guess that's fine on a value face, but like then you have to pay everybody this summer and things get really, really convoluted and tough to square. I don't know. Stay out of that. For me, I'm hoping for the Eric Kareen route. Eric Kareen wrote in The Athletic today about how this is just a week for hitting singles. And what have the Raptors done really well in their last couple trades? The Davion Mitchell trade on the second day of the draft and the Ochai Agbaji trade at the deadline last year. They hit really, really nice, hard hit up the middle singles on that one, right? Sometimes you just got to hit singles. Sometimes you just got to get little tiny wins that can then spiral and grow into more wins once your big bats come up. In this case, the big bats being either them winning the draft lottery or them trading for some kind of star at some point in the next 18 months or so. Which, by the way, I used the phrase trade constipation on the podcast last week with S. Henny to kind of describe the lack of gigantic moves that have happened and what I think is probably going to happen now that the new CBA's realities are setting in over the next 18 months or so. And boy, oh boy, Luka Doncic, call him Laxa Doncic. The floodgate's been broken. The dam has been totally washed away, and trade diarrhea is upon us, baby. Crazy. Anyway, hit singles, find takers for your expiring salaries, bring back second-round picks, grease teams as a third team to get assets back in return. Maybe find some vets on with out of money going into next year that you can trade at next year's deadline. Like, just do that stuff, and I think you're pretty happy. You don't got to go reinvent the wheel here. There will be a time for the Raptors to get aggressive, and I think they will have a chance to go and do that as like the league feels like it's in kind of a weird space. I wonder, just like, not to get geopolitical here or anything like that, but I wonder what just like the general state of the U.S. economy in the coming 4 years is going to mean for what owners want to be doing. The Mavericks didn't want to pay Luka Doncic a supermax. If that's a thing, so much is on the table. So many guys could become available. And I think the Raptors are in a pretty decent spot to go and try to strike on that stuff. The Spurs just used a lot of their trade cash of assets to go get De'Aaron Fox. That's one more team off the board for like the next big star to come available. I don't think the Thunder are really ever going to do it because they just seem like they're going to use their picks to sustain the Shea, Chet, Jalen Williams era forever. I think probably rightfully so. Like the list of teams that is in a position to make a real trade should someone become available, it grows thinner by the day. And the Raptors, we know they're always going to be in on the mix for these guys. And so, yeah, I am fascinated to see what this week's brings. Zach Lowe said on his little impromptu reaction video podcast last night on Twitter The first time I've used Twitter in months just to watch Zach Lowe talk for a while because I've been missing Zach Lowe so much. He talked about it, the chatter in the league being off the charts right now, just like tons of stuff going on. He said there will be more trades as a sign off. And yeah, it seems like the Raptors kind of hold a key to a lot of this stuff as a team that can grease stuff. Fascinating to see what this week brings. We'll cover it, of course, in great detail on this here podcast over the next handful of days before the deadline on Thursday. We will leave it there. Thank you so much for rocking with the show. Please follow, subscribe, rate, review, tell a friend. We'll be back again tomorrow. I'm not going to pencil in what we're going to talk about yet because who knows? The entire league could have been traded by then. Maybe Giannis is on the Heat or something, and we need to react to that in some way, shape, or form and tied into the Raptors. So we'll leave Tuesday a little open. They, of course, play games Tuesday and Wednesday. The deadline's Thursday. Busy week ahead here for your Toronto Raptors and for me, your newsletter posting podcast man. In the meantime, subscribe to the newsletter, go to the Discord, all that good stuff. Thanks so much for hanging out. We'll talk to you again Tuesday with another episode of Locked On Raptors. Bye-bye. Oh, that bounced and hit me in the back.